In McCord, we are live.
Thank you, Richard. So item one, well, firstly, welcome everybody. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first meeting of this this committee as it's been newly constituted. So welcome everybody, and hopefully we can crack on. Apologies.
Apologies, Chairman, from Councillor Wiltshire, and unfortunately a bit last minute, and she's been unable to get a substitute to attend on her behalf.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? So appointment of Vice Chairman for the municipal year 2021. Can I propose Carl Billingham?
I'll second that.
Second.
Agreed.
Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Excellent choice.
He's trying to what's the word? Neutralise me, aren't you, Ian?
Well, wish myself luck with that.
It's in one of the policies.
A Carl Billingham policy. We better not go anywhere with that.
But quite a few items to raise.
Right, the minutes of the previous personnel committee have been circulated and are on pages 5 to 10. So is there anything on page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10's blank, so page 9. So is it our wish that we agree those minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And I have no announcements to make. So the changes to HR policies and pages 11 to 80. Who's introducing these?
Chairman, it's me. Is that okay with colleagues? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. This is quite a comprehensive report, so apologies for the extensive bedtime reading. Just to give you some background, when we split from Cherwell, HR was then split into two functions. The HR advice and policy side of it is now dealt with LGSS colleagues. And when they took over that at the end of last year, what they did was undertake a review of our current HR policies. And as they started working with us in terms of giving advice in individual staff cases, what they noticed was that some of our cases could be updated, I suppose, for two reasons. One, to ensure that they were clearer to understand by staff and managers, but also to make the actual use of them more effective, so that both, again, staff and managers understood what their personal responsibilities were and what would happen in certain situations. So the 6 policies that you have before you in the next 60 odd pages of the report actually set that out. In this report itself, section 3 goes through each policy in turn. It highlights whether it's a new policy, such as the absence without authorised leave policy, and that one's a particularly relevant new one, in that what it does is just make it clearer to our staff that they do have responsibilities to attend work at the right time and in the right place, which of course we all know is self-explanatory. But if they have personal issues, or if there are other things, they have responsibilities to let the council know, so that we can work with them, give them leave, and provide services. And then in terms of other policies themselves, if I may, I'll just quickly summarise them and perhaps then welcome questions. The annual leave policy has just been updated to reflect changes to terms and conditions that happened a couple of years ago. The staff were advised of that at the time and consulted, but the actual policy itself wasn't updated. The disciplinary policy has just been reworded and simplified and actually made, I suppose, more user-friendly, but because it was quite draconian in its tone before, and we wanted to make it easier to understand, particularly the significance of what happened. Item 3.6 in the report is I think, a particularly welcome addition, which is a managing menopause policy. We've done a lot of work with staff over the last year, and we've got some staff champions that have really moved this forward, raised awareness of the menopause, you know, the actual symptoms of that and the effects of that, and how it affects colleagues, you know, situations, and what we need to do about it. So we've actually done a lot of training and a lot of staff awareness sessions and really improved the awareness of the menopause, and I think that's making a real difference. And of course, also very few councils have a menopause policy, so it's particularly good that we've got one for our staff. The other two changes: performance improvement policy has replaced the capability policy. Again, under previous themes, it's been simplified, and it's very much more about supporting staff through this, because obviously with performance improvement, what we want staff to do is improve their performance and us not have to take steps if they don't. And apologies there's a repetition of paragraph number. In what should be paragraph 3.8, the sickness and absence policy has again been simplified, and we've revised that and made the responsibilities of staff and managers clearer. So if I may, Chairman, hand over to members for any questions and observations about the policies.
Okay, so I think it's probably going to be easier to just sort of go through them one at a time. If there's any particular burning issues, I don't intend to go through every page of every policy, but on the, so if we start just in the order they're set out, the absence without leave policy, is there any questions, queries or concerns with that one? Carla and Tony.
Couple. Under paragraph 2, page 17, page 3 of this particular item, where we talk about an absence without authorised leave, and it says may be treated as a serious disciplinary offence, which I think comes across as a rather harsh opening statement. It is qualified later on, but I don't know whether it's quite as user-friendly as we'd like it to be, or whether we intend it to be somewhat threatening to try and stop them from doing it. And having made that point, can I first of all say that I do think that these policies are exceptionally well written. They're very readable, they're very clear, and they're very lucid. And I think they are a great improvement on what we've offered in the past. We've removed all sort of obfuscation and things. So overall, I think that they're an excellent job, well done. But there are quite a few points that I would like to raise. And that was the first one, that although under principles, it says failure to attend work and to report absence may be an act of gross misconduct and potentially a breach of contract. I do think that within the scope, I just wonder if we could find some form of alternative wording.
No, so thank you, Councillor Billingham. That's a very astute comment. I think, you know, as I've said in my introduction, we want the policies to be clear and transparent and friendly, and this one particularly is designed to remove any confusion. And although disciplinary action may well follow as discussed later, I agree that, you know, with hindsight, we need to revise that paragraph at the end of section 2 of the policy to make it more in keeping with what we're seeking to do at the beginning. So thank you for that observation.
It still only reads may, it doesn't say will or...
No, I know, I do acknowledge that, Ian, but it's just, sorry, Chairman, but it's just that I think that, yeah, no, okay, fine.
Okay, Tony?
I've made the point.
Thanks, Chairman. It's mentioned in the policy to start with, but it's to do with people taking a day off prior to or after annual leave or public holidays. And it's something I had to deal with in my career. People sometimes don't return for whatever reason until a day later. Quite often they say they're sick on the day they're supposed to return. We required a doctor's certificate to cover that, be it private, because people do sometimes take the liberty. How do we handle that one?
In that very same way, Councillor. So I think it may be useful for me to reflect that in the policy, but because obviously in those situations there sometimes may be some issues, and obviously we do need to satisfy ourselves that the employee has a genuine reason to be off.
To do my washing. Sorry, I didn't say that.
I remember when I was a student, I was working at a place over the summer, which had a race course in it. And one of the tasks I was given was to try to correlate whether or not a certain individual's absence correlated with race days.
So just on the final point on that, Jeff. So someone is on a flight, they've been down to Spain, whatever. They're due back, they tend to fly and get home about 1 o'clock in the morning, come to work the next morning. Assuming that flight was delayed, how do you handle that? Do you insist on an extra day's holiday, or what do you do?
I think we'd take a pragmatic approach, Councillor, and actually look at the merits of the case. Obviously, we would need the member of staff to prove that, but we would try and be flexible in how we dealt with it. And I would have thought we'd be looking for them to have an extra day if they couldn't get into work that day. I think the main thing is with this policy as a whole is just to remind staff to make that contact so that we can actually provide the service and we can actually deal with it. So what we really want to do is just encourage staff to be telling us if they think there's going to be a problem, so they don't end up in a problem. So if a flight's delayed, they should know about that before it takes off, for instance, and they should contact their manager at that point. If it's delayed in flight, as it were, it's bad English, isn't it? Sorry. Or they were delayed when they arrived at the inbound airport, then again, they should be able to contact us then. So a lot of this is about just helping employees remember that they have a responsibility to us and to let us know when there are issues so that we can deal with them.
Thank you.
May I raise another item, please? And this is under the tables on pages 18 and 19, where we talk about sending the first absent without authorised leave standard letter by recorded delivery, second and third on working days 2, 4 and 7. And it says a copy should also be delivered by hand. How do we execute that? Who is responsible for it?
Thank you, Councillor. The manager of that team is responsible to do that. So we would expect the manager to do that themselves or arrange for a senior person in the team to do that.
Okay.
And it's obviously subject to the current COVID restrictions. So they do that in the appropriate way. But we would expect somebody in that team to do that, and the manager has the responsibility to make sure it's done.
Thank you.
So at the end of that, should we put where possible, which covers off at the moment for COVID, but it also covers us off that in the event that you get to working day 4 and there isn't a hand delivered letter for a very good reason, then someone says, oh, well, you haven't followed your own policy, therefore you can't do anything with me, because you always get caught up on the technicalities of these things.
It does say should.
Yeah, okay. A copy should, yeah. Well, that's fine.
Yeah, so thank you, Chairman. So it might be that, is it worth actually making the first sentence of working day 4 to actually say the manager should? Although having said that, that's open to interpretation.
Well, it says it will send the second letter, presumably by post or delivery, and then and then should do a belt and braces for the hand delivered one. But at the moment, there could be very good reasons why you wouldn't want to.
I think again, all of this is about the manager proactively trying to get in touch with the employee, and the whole emphasis of that is this series of actions is over a number of days, and the managers should be endeavouring a number of times each day to make contact. What we don't want is them to look at it and go, well, today I just need to do this and I'll forget about it till tomorrow, and so on and so on. It's about the manager being proactive to contact the employee as well.
And presumably there's a sort of duty of care that, if you have an employee who hasn't come in, that in fact there's something has gone seriously wrong. We obviously want to know about that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So that we can support them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it is it is more likely than not that they have had personal issues, and of course there might be employees that live on their own, say, and you know, something terrible has befallen them, so we actually need to make that contact, and by going out and hand delivering the letter, we might actually find something out and spot something. So it's not all about employees deliberately avoiding coming into work. There's other things that go on, and as you say, Councillor, it is about our duty of care to our staff as well.
Okay.
Yeah, can I just add that the point made about managers keeping notes, which is detailed in on the working day 1. I mean, that's a practice that needs obviously to be repeated at every stage. I mean, the notes are really important.
Yeah.
Whether that needs emphasising, I don't know.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, it is repeated in days 2 and 3, but we need to clarify that in.
I'm assuming that as part of whatever briefing training that we give managers, the general point of keeping good contemporaneous notes of conversations had, actions taken, etc., is there, because I know with all of these HR issues, we must follow our own procedures, and we must be seen to have followed our own procedures, because time and again you'll get tripped up on not following in technicalities, and people, you know, find the loopholes and dodge around if they're so minded. But I think that we should also be saying somewhere at some point here that in general, I don't think we have many problems in these areas. We're just sort of making sure that we don't. I don't think it's a big problem that we're trying to solve here, because I think we would all agree that our staff are very very good. Their attendance is good, and if anything, they, and particularly over the last number of months with COVID, they've shown they're happy to step up and work over and above and way and beyond anything that we'd have asked of them. So I think we should be, and as we are going out public here, we should be very clear in making that clear to people, that we're not saying to our staff, we're trying to trip you up. Quite the opposite. We're just, if anything, if we do get one person who does begin to take liberties, I suspect the rest of them will be very quick to say what can be done about this. I think I saw Richard indicating earlier. Did you want to come in, Richard?
I think it was just with regards to the manager delivering a letter, and I was just going to suggest that you might put a rider at the end of that sentence to suggest, you know, taking account of prevailing circumstances, e.g. COVID-19, close brackets.
Andrew?
Can I suggest a different way? Because I think we could be amending the policies in various places to allow for coronavirus, and it could get a bit messy. What I would suggest is at the top, you know, we put in there something, you know, like this is a policy which we're looking to apply, but obviously this will be amended or used pragmatically due to the current coronavirus pandemic, or words to that effect. Then we can remove that, you know, if it disappears.
Yeah, go back to normal. Yeah, that sounds sensible. So, any other comments on this AWOL policy?
The only comment I would make in general, Chairman, is in relation to the fact that we're saying that we think that in the main this is not relevant to our own staff, but we are looking at policies which will be in harmony with the other 2-3 authorities when we come to local government reform in April. And we do need our staff to be aware of policies that may to them prove a little more draconian when they become employees of West Northamptonshire than they have heretofore known. So I think that it's an advance notice as well, which is well made.
Okay, agreed. So Jeff, have you got those comments? Because I think when we get to recommendations, they're all seeking approval that you can make.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've got those. Yes,
make various tweaks and sign them off. So, annual leave policy. Then, any issues on that one? Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, under number 2, we're talking that if they employees who started with us from the 1st of September and later get 33 days annual leave under joint management team. Whereas if they started before their protected entitlement, is only 31 days, which seems a bit unfair to me. 28 plus 3 is only 31. Or am I misunderstanding something?
I think the 1st of September was the date Richard started. I don't know.
Just a casual inquiry.
Well, Richard, Jeff,
Hang there now.
look into that and see how many people. And
Yeah,
are we saying that we are minded to level that up if it's not a big deal?
Yeah, it struck me as being rather odd.
I think, Chairman, if we look at that and understand what it actually means, then by all means, what we're not seeking to do is disadvantage staff that were here before. So I think that's something to actually get more information on, isn't it? But take into account what we're seeking to do is to level up rather than level down, as it were.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, so we'll move on to disciplinary policy. Any comments on that? Carl?
Yes.
I can see a pattern here. It's okay.
Paragraph 5.2, page 32. The last bullet point, I think needs the words "is given" at the end of that sentence, and provided at least 2 calendar days notice of their intention to do so is given, because it
Okay,
otherwise doesn't make sense.
no problem.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Page 34, 5.4.4. Just a question of style, really, but the first 2 bullet points don't have an uppercase initial letter, and they should do for consistency. And it is a public document, therefore I think it's important that we do things like that.
No, that's very well spotted, Councillor Billingham. I'll update that.
Right, I'm a bit like that. You'll get.
Can I just give you a bit of advice here, Jeff? Send all of these to Carl, and she will do a fantastic job in proofreading.
And on 10.1, page 36, the 3rd bullet point should say Appeals Committee, not Appeal Committee.
So where was that, Councillor? 10 point.
Page 36, 10.1.
3rd bullet point.
3rd bullet point says the Appeal Committee, and it should be Appeals.
Right. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it says Appeals further. Thank you.
Any other comments? And we move on to the managing the menopause at work policy. Carl, we'll start with you again.
I haven't got any. Well, I've got yeah, silly one. Page 43. Symptom hot flushes. Examples of support and adjustments. Adaptation to dress code. I think that the dress could be lowercase d. I don't think it needs to be uppercase. You got there?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, yes, I've got it. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Any other?
But that was me being really picky.
Yeah. Or should there not be an indent dash then in the sleep disturbance right hand box?
Well spotted, Chairman. I was waiting for you to notice that.
So we're happy with that one as well. So performance one. Can you get it? Performance, yeah, improvement policy. Page 51. Carl?
Page 53, number 4, responsibilities. Managers are responsible for, and the first bullet point should be a lowercase e for consistency. Page 54, formal procedure. We've got to, in the introductory sentence, we've got 2 that's. It is expected that with a structured improvement, that most performance concerns will be resolved. So we need to remove that second that.
But pardon me, Councillor Bingham, where was that?
Number 6, formal procedure.
Yes, yep.
Is expected, comma, that with a structured improvement framework in place and appropriate support from the line manager, comma, most performance issues will be resolved.
Right, thank you.
I'm looking at those
So if we're really nitpicking, I would never start a bullet point with a lowercase and then end with a full stop. If you start with a lowercase, you shouldn't have a full stop because it's a list.
I was going to say we're not consistent with the use of the full stop either, because sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not going through those lists. But
in fact, each bullet point does make a sentence on its own. So
it should have a capital letter then.
Should have a capital then.
No, because it's employees are responsible for. They are subjunctive phrases, but let's not go there.
Right. Well, we can agree a house style and then stick with it.
As long as there's no apostrophe. Fine.
If there's any crimes against the apostrophe, be sure Carl will pick them up as well.
Certainly
Okay,
will.
when we get to this delegation at the end of this, I'm going to delegate this to the deputy chair to be happy with it. And if she's happy with it, I'll be happy with it. And on the sick absence one,
Sorry, I've just got one other one, which is on 7.1, invitation to meeting. Should we have something which says that the employee needs to acknowledge receipt of same? Because you could send the invitation to meeting by post or email and they could just ignore it. And they could say, I've not received it. Computer wasn't working that day, or postman didn't come, or the dog chewed it up before I read it. And there is nothing which says that the employee will acknowledge receipt of letter and admit and agree intention to attend or something similar.
They won't acknowledge receipt because they don't want to attend. So it's a bit of a catch-22, that one.
But does that one, I'm sure I read in one of these where it said that if you don't bother to turn up, we're going to carry on anyway.
Chairman, that's true. I think as long as we can prove that the notice has been served on the employee, that the employee does have responsibility to turn up, and that there is a risk that some employees will, because of the situation they're in, say they've never had something, and therefore on that basis, if we relied on them confirming that they'd had it, we may not be able to proceed. But if we can demonstrate quite clearly we have served the notice, then we proceed.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And on the 5th bullet point of 7.1, I think we need the word advise in at the beginning there.
Or inform.
And, well, yeah, but it needs a verb.
Yep. Okay.
And should there be an apostrophe after calendar days?
No.
Yeah, it's used a couple of times through that.
It's the one under number 2, give at least 7 calendar days notice, is correct because it's notice of 7 calendar days. At the bottom, the last one is at least 3 calendar days before the meeting, which is not. Trust me.
Absolutely.
We do.
Okay. Any other comments on this one?
Just going back on this acknowledgement of receipt, could it not be done with an acknowledgement through email? Automatically get a tick back that someone read it?
Don't know. I certainly know whenever I get a thing that says so-and-so wants a read receipt, I always decline to send them.
So do I.
Oh,
I think, Chairman, that's exactly it. Although you can request a read receipt, the actual recipient can cancel that request. I suppose it could be argued that if you don't get an error message back saying that the email address is wrong, then by definition you would know they've had that. But I think the key is us making sure that we are satisfied and can demonstrate that it has been served on the employee, and there's a number of ways of doing that.
Yeah, I would question that actually, because I know that certain emails that I send to our business account don't get through completely inexplicably, and I would struggle to prove that they've got through. So I don't know that we could rely on that.
Okay. So do we want to strengthen this in some way? Like, is the recorded delivery option the sort of acknowledged one, even that courts and everybody else accept?
legally been correct for many years, Ian.
Andrew, what's your view?
I'm just trying to be pragmatic here with regards to this. You know, the thing is that if we hadn't heard from them, I think we'd probably pick up the phone and talk to them anyway, and just say that, you know, have you got it? Are there any issues? You know, is there a reason why we haven't heard back from you? You know, I think trying to find a foolproof method is quite difficult.
Would we not look to perhaps a standard procedure for something like the lowest level of tribunal through the public system? So if you were being served documents by, say, money claim online, what is the standard of proof that they require? That's the standard of proof that we might require. So not incredibly onerous, but reasonable.
Well, without trying to design it now, do you want to just take those comments on board, Andrew, and then incorporate them into any?
Yeah, will do.
Okay. And then sickness, absence, and management. Carl.
Yes. Paragraph 3 on responsibilities, page 66. I think the third bullet point should be starting with carry, not carrying. The managers must carry out return to work discussions.
Also, and there's a lowercase letter and the rest don't.
Yeah, but yeah, the word is wrong and it needs an uppercase initial letter. Yes. Yeah.
Some have full stops and some don't.
Under paragraph 4 on the next page, we've got a series of 9 bullet points, but 4, 5, and 6 are actually double bullet points regarding number 3. So they need to be indented because they're not all individual items. 3 of them are explanations and clarifications of number 3. You with me?
Yes, yes, thank you, Councillor. Yeah.
Carol, back to page 66. Each bullet point is followed by nothing, a full stop, or a semicolon. There seems to, I don't know, it seems the managers must do all sorts of things, really.
Well, I have
punctuated by something different. Should there be a common style in there?
There ought to be, and it is a public document.
So again, we can leave matters of style. Are we happy with matters of substance? There's no, I think we can take the matters of style offline, but the substance.
Okay.
We're happy with them the way they're written, what they're intended to do.
Yeah, and I think that when the documents have gone through to look at this sort of thing, then that's something that may well be picked up by the reader, because when you write them, you don't notice things. When you read them again, you often do.
Indeed. And I suspect you often find these are written by different people, so you do get slightly.
That's right. They're cut and pasted, aren't they? I think.
You need a single editor then to apply a house style, which will be you, Carol.
The requirement for further information, please, on 5.2 risk assessment, which is where the GP's medical statement says the employee is not fit for work, but the employee wants to return to work. How do we stand on insurance?
I think we've had a couple of instances around these sort of areas with COVID recently, with people wanting to come in and us saying we don't think that's a good idea, and I think our will prevailed.
Chairman, that's exactly right. I think also we have to undertake a risk assessment and make a judgment, and more often than not, once we've talked to the employee about it and they've reflected upon that, then they will understand our nervousness to allow them back to work, and they will accept that they do need to be off because a medical profession has said they should still be off.
Fine, that's okay.
I think it's a general rule, it would be ill-advised as an employer to allow somebody back to work whose doctor had said they're not fit.
Yeah.
How about
a load of risk there that we just don't need to run, but that's a personal view.
How about under the present COVID issues? Does the rules not change there? Because you're not necessarily in a doctor to get yourself off to self-isolate, but do you need to have some form of, I don't know, whatever to come back, albeit in a at-home basis? I think the rules are slightly different. I've encountered this down at our local school and their insurance down there and the way that works in terms of return to work. That's an open question. I don't have an answer in.
Andrew?
Well, I was just going to suggest that we have a look at that and make sure that you know, if there's a need for a cross reference there, we put it in.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
it's an interesting point, this, because let's assume you got a broken leg. Coming back into the office might be a risk, but if you're working from home as we are today, having a broken leg, you're at home anyway. So is there going to be a difference between those two situations?
Thank you, Councillor. I think the situation there is obviously we have to take into account somebody's ability to work. So therefore it depends what their situation is. So as you say, if they've broken a limb and their work is office based, then there's no reason why they can't continue working at home. If they've broken their leg, say, and they're a refuse loader, then they can't work. So it depends on the individual situation. And I suppose the overall principle is what's the GP said and how do we deal with that?
I was going back more to the insurance side. With a broken leg in the office, it could be pretty dangerous.
Indeed, Councillor. I think in each individual case, not only have we got the fit to work note and that whole process and, you know, a medical professional's advice, but managers, you know, should be talking to the member of staff, understanding what's going on and understanding what they can and can't do. Because what we don't want is situations where somebody says, I'm sick because of A, so I can't do anything. Whereas in actual fact, you know, normal management dialogue with a member of staff can actually reveal that they can do certain things, but they can't do others. You know, and it's also, that's also within the context of risk as well. So as you pick up on the person with a broken leg, you know, it depends exactly how that works, how it fits in with their situation. And if we've got somebody at the forum and they need to get about, that's one thing. If they're actually in their own home and they can sit at a desk and do their office bound work, as it were, then that's something else.
Yeah.
But it may be a psychological benefit to them to do that.
Yeah.
And the policy did mention about broken limbs as one example. And again, you know, things like you got a broken leg, you may not be able to evacuate an office within the time frame, which could be a problem for you and everybody else queuing up behind you to get out the emergency exit, which could be an issue. May not be much of an issue at home, but we might have to think then also about physio and things like that to allow reasonable time off that they can get themselves back up to speed, because the quicker that happens, it's probably a good investment of time, because the quicker it happens, the quicker we get a fully functional employee back. But I saw a couple of people wanting to come in. Andrew?
Yeah, we talked about the rider that we put on the top of each of our policies here. It could be that within this one here, because there are some salient points there. We should be picking up the fact that obviously with people working more from home, the assessments need to take that into consideration.
Yeah. And I think Martin wants to come in, but I think as we move forward post-COVID, this type of working from home will be a lot easier now. There'll be no such thing really as saying, I have to. We know now from the last 6-8 months that a lot of our work can now be done from home. So it'll be harder to say that, to mandate someone to come to an office. It'll be much easier to say you can do a little bit at home. Sorry, Martin, John, do you want?
I was just going to say that we must always stick with the medical advice, because I mean, if we give an example of someone with a broken limb, of course, someone with a broken limb, they may be on medication, they may be on painkillers, which may adversely affect their ability to do the job. So it's not as straightforward as it may seem.
Yeah, and they still might have a rigorous physio routine to go through, but they might be able to do light duties at home, 4 hours work a day rather than 8. I agree with you. But again, if you're on heavy duty painkillers and pretty tired and sleepy because of them, then you probably don't want to be doing work and making mistakes. So, but those are all things that should be taken into account. I'm sure there'll be a reasonableness applied to all of our policies.
I think, Chairman, as well, managers are expected to and do liaise with HR in the individual cases to get more specialist advice. So if there is any element of doubt on the behalf of the manager, then they will seek HR advice and get the right way forward for the organisation and the employee.
Okay.
It's always the problem when you make one statement that you have to make 17 others to qualify it, and then you have to make 43 to qualify the 17, don't you?
Okay. So,
may I have a couple more?
Of course.
Thank you. Page 71, paragraph 6.9, pregnancy-related illness. The second bullet point needs a lowercase d. And okay, and 6.12 over the page, the council has a designated occupational health service and has a contractual right to reasonably ask, not have. I won't say anything about the split infinitive because they seem to have become acceptable in the modern world, even though they're great. And I've got one more on this policy, Chairman, which is 722. Oh, hang on. The top of the page, 676. So the paragraph that starts in circumstances, the second line, we do need an apostrophe between the E and the S of employees because it's the absence of a single employee. And 7.22, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet point, twice we have the apostrophe indicating that they're plural employees and they should both be singular employees. Because I hope we're only doing one at a time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So the recommendation on this one is to approve the relevant policies. Can I thought we were putting in there about subject to general tidying up. I don't see it on this recommendation.
Chair, you've got it on the next paper, and I wonder whether or not we just use that one.
Use that same wording, please, and have a recommendation that we approve those policies. But can I also ask that that we include now the vice chair of this committee to make sure that Carl's happy, and that will, as an editing and house style function and all of those crimes against English, that she's very good at spotting and sorting out for us. So if we can append Carl's name to that recommendation, I would be very happy. If committee's happy of that as well.
Sorry, may I just ask a question on that, since I've got landed with the next one as a in consultation with for amendments. Are you saying that I pick up this one as well as Carol, or?
I'm happy to have both of you on there, or keep it in Brackley. It's fine by me.
Fine.
Unless you wanted, well, no, I'm happy to leave it with you. I think this sits in your portfolio, doesn't it, Peter?
I'm not sure. Certainly the second
Friday.
One. But I'm quite happy to pick it up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we can do that, but just append Carl as well, because that keeps it also a link back to this committee as well.
Yeah.
So we move on to. So I take it we're agreed then in that amended recommendation.
Agreed. Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you. So item 7 then, redundancy policy.
Thank you, Chairman. It's me again. So the redundancy policy has come about as we approach the Unitary Council. It's been noted in discussions between the councils and respective HR functions that there is a difference in approach to redundancy between the sovereign authorities. So this report, which introduces a revised policy, is the purpose of this is twofold. One is to have a consistent approach with regards to calculation of the redundancy going forward, because our previous redundancy policy is contained in the organisational change, which is an appendix to this policy, and it is not very clear. And secondly, it's just to make the policy more comprehensive and easier to understand and read, because the current reference to redundancy in the organisational change policy is somewhat brief. And as members can see from the length of this policy, what we've sought to do now is significantly expand the advice and the process of it to make it clear to employees what the process is and what the effects of it are. Also, of course, as I'm sure members are familiar with, the government has implemented the public sector pay cap regulations in the last few weeks. They're due to come into effect in 2 weeks' time. That will have an effect on this policy. As the finer detail in terms of the operation of that with regards pension particularly are still being worked out by MHCLG and others. That is why you'll see that the recommendation includes reference to the portfolio holder to make changes going forward to take into account when the legislation and the actual mechanics of operating the legislation come into effect. So what I'd like to suggest, if I may, Chairman, is to invite members to go through the policy as we've done with the previous policies this morning and highlight any issues and questions and so on.
Okay, so any questions?
Three comments, Chairman. Again, first of all, to say that it's a very well drafted and scripted policy. I think it's very clear, and I'm very grateful. On page 89, at the bottom of number 7, it says consultation with trade unions should be underway before individual consultation commences. We've always had an issue at South Northamptonshire that quite a lot of our staff were not in a union. And I've slightly lost track since I was last on AMP, but I would imagine that that's probably still the case. And I'm not quite sure how involved those individuals can be in initial consultations. If they don't want to have a trade union representative, they probably don't want to have a staff representative of their own. And I'm wondering how we involve them and give them the same opportunities that the members of trade unions get because of their representative.
Chairman, if I may respond, I think that's a very good point. We don't have a high level of trade union representation in the council, although we do work very closely with all of the unions. What we do seek to do is give everybody as much information as we can at the appropriate time. So although trade unions may have a heads up, as it were, we always endeavour to make sure that all staff that are affected are put in the loop as soon as they can. Also, they have an expectation things are coming, and they're aware of what's going on. In terms of support individual members of staff have who are not in the union, then obviously other members of staff can support them, and our HR team will offer help and advice to both staff and managers in these situations to reassure them and just explain what's happening, how it affects them, and what they, what options they have. So, it's although we have a collective bargaining mechanism with the unions and we have formal regular meetings with the unions, we still have a duty of care to all of our employees, and therefore we make sure that everybody is treated in the same way at the same time, whether they're in the union or not.
Should we put in a sentence that, sorry, I see Phil's indicating, like just follow on from this one. Should there be some sort of sentence which says employees not in a trade union will not be disadvantaged by this process?
I think that's a very good point, Councillor.
Trade unions are a statutory consultee when it comes to redundancies and that. So irrespective of their level of representation, they have a statutory role, don't they?
Having been involved in this sort of stuff in my distant past, I agree with Carol. To the individual who doesn't want to bring an employee along with them or a trade union representative because he's not a trade union, he should have the ability, or they should have the ability, to have an independent person there, if only just to sit and take notes and note what's going on, and have a set of ears that's listening, that's not necessarily heard by the employee because they're focused on other things. You can give them as much information as you like, but having somebody there as a third party, they can maybe not even allowed to speak in a meeting, and that's up to how it's conducted. But it's important there's somebody there. It could be a professional, all sort of thing, that can then talk to them afterwards and say, yeah, did da 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 da. I think Carol's very, very right, and I think you do disadvantage people that are not in a trade union by doing it that way, because you don't want to take an employee along with you necessarily, because they've got possibly the same view as you have. You need a fresh set of eyes or ears.
Objectivity.
So we're happy to make that as an amendment. See everybody nodding. So we'll leave that with you, Andrew and Jeff, to
Yeah.
So on the page 92 on the multipliers, which is the thing that everybody gets, am I right in thinking that if you were over 41, just so we got that, you get 1.5 times 1.5, so you would get 2.25 times your salary?
No, Chairman, it's 1.5 times your weekly salary.
All right.
It's probably, I wonder if therefore I just need to slightly amend the wording, because the key there is the age, and it's not a cumulative calculation. It's each line relates to that age range, so you don't add them together.
Actual weekly gross pay multiplied by the number of weeks in the table above, multiplied by 1.5. That's how it read to me.
Are we not saying that they get the equivalent of the statutory requirement for people who are 41 and over, regardless of their age?
Yes, Councillor Billingham. Sorry, it was me.
But in that event, if you're 41 and over and you're entitled to 1.5, we're multiplying that again by 1.5. Is that this is how this reads to me? This table works.
I think, Chairman, then what we should do is look at putting in a clarifying sentence, because it is designed to. So the first paragraph, sorry, the first table sets out the statutory position. The second table, for all intents and purposes, say that we will give everybody a multiplier of 1.5. So
over statutory.
In total.
Instead of.
But that's different.
Yes. Surely it just needs to say 1.5 weeks pay. So it says number of weeks by a factor of 1.5, and just clarify that 1.5, because we're not, the weeks stay the same. They're still 1. It's just the 1.5.
Well, the way this table reads, in the middle of that, it says you would get your pay plus your statutory times 1.5.
Yeah, but the 1.5
Jeff's saying different. Richard's agreeing with me. I'm not sure which it is. Richard, you're on mute.
That's certainly what it says in the document here, and that would be my understanding. There's a statutory level which is established based on your age, and then what we're recommending is that there is a further multiplier of 1.5 on the statutory level.
So that's for someone who is 41 over, that's 2.25 times the number of weeks they're entitled to.
And for somebody who's 22, it's 3/4 instead of a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for somebody who's in the middle, it's 1.5 instead of 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's actually the intention.
That is the intention. And that is consistent with all of the other Northamptonshire authorities.
If that's the intention, okay.
Okay. And then this is all obviously subject to the cap that might be coming in.
Yeah.
Well, it will be coming in, because I think then the cap also caps the gross annual pay, doesn't it? I think it says that you can only be paid on a total salary, I think, of 85,000.
Yes, Chairman, that's correct. So the cap, the key about the cap is the cost to the employer having a ceiling of 95, but there is reference to a maximum of 80,000 in the pay part of it. Yes.
Yeah. And as we also said, there needs to be modifications to the pensions regulations as well, because the 95 includes pension strain payment if pension strain was there. which at the moment is where the conflict might lie in two parts of law, one saying you're entitled to it, one saying you're not. So, any other comments on this redundancy policy?
A couple, please, if I may, Chairman. Page 90, paragraph 12, second line, selection criteria should be developed which are clear, objective and precisely defined, not is.
Okay.
Yeah. And page 93, paragraph 17, it says pensions is a complex area, and I'm having a struggle with myself here, because I accept that pensions is a term, but equally I think it should say pensions are. Sorry.
I would agree.
Or pension policy is
yeah, whatever, but yes, but if it's
okay, well, I'll leave you to tidy this up. Anything else?
well, if I could mention less than 2 years pensionable service, the apostrophe is in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I've got one more, I think, which was.
Well, when we get to the recommendation, we're going to make you the English.
Yes, I know, but I need to say them, and then there's no chance if they're sent to me again. They've already been done, and I can just cross-reference and
okay,
rather than yeah. And on paragraph 20 on page 94, the normal dismissal procedure will be followed, and I think that on the second line we should have the semicolon after dismissal and a comma after therefore. We've just got some transposition of punctuation there, which makes it not sense. So I'm sorry to be a pain, Chairman, but that's it. Thank you very much.
Got all those, Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Any other comments?
I have every expectation of being sacked from this committee after today's meeting.
Not in the slightest. I have every expectation you're going to get sent a whole load of these and say, there you go, my friend, read that lot. You started it.
Takes me back to the days of full council, when papers were received at full council with the size of a large telephone directory, and Carol would go through page by page.
Yeah, well, she's nothing of not consistent.
Somebody has to.
Indeed.
Perfectly correctly. Yeah.
And I agree, actually. It is useful because for public documents, it's a mark of, you know, when you're looking at them and you see such howling grammar errors, you immediately think, this is not an organization I want to be dealing with if they can't even write you a sentence that's sensible. So, anyway, are we happy with the outline of this? And again, so the recommendation to get member approval with the assistant director, customer services, in conjunction with portfolio holder for finance, and I'm going to append to that, and the vice chairman of this committee, to make amendments and reflect changes in legislation. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So number 8, the separation update. Richard, Jeff?
No, it's me. Sorry, I was muted, so I couldn't get in there quick enough. I had this paper down tabled for this committee back in March, when I think it had been a lot more interesting. But obviously that meeting was cancelled as we're moved into lockdown. But I thought it was still worthwhile putting here for members, because just to see exactly where we are, with the work which is being done and the few arrangements which we still have in place. And it starts off with strategic transport and talks about the fact that we know that Andy moved across to CDC, and we now have Caroline, who's picking up those duties and is looking after our interests, amongst other things, on the areas of Towcester Relief Road, Farminghoe, and the delightful A5 Brackley Road junction. Building control, we have left CDC with regards to that, and we have Warwick, who are providing the management resource with that. Democratic services, we have the excellent Tash on the call here, and Richard as well. Just to say that we are getting support from CDC for meetings such as council and cabinet, but we are doing a number ourselves as well, now that we have Richard and Diana on board. Elections management is now with the Daventry District Council, and that is working well. And just for information, the election teams across the county meet very, very regularly, because they know that they have the job of actually doing all of the elections which are taking place in May. So there's a lot of collective working there. Legal services, Nick Graham left Cherwell, and we now have Suckdave in his place, and I have regular meetings with him to make sure that we are getting the service that we require from CDC. But just so that members are aware also, we do tap into district law advice as well when CDC isn't able to provide it, such as in the areas of litigation work. Members will be aware of the 6 months notice which we gave to CDC for the termination of the SLA with regards to fleet management. If I remember rightly, that came to Cabinet as well to get an agreement there. And then following on from that, we have a number of arrangements in place with regards to communications and marketing transformation, whereby we link into the resource which is at CDC, just to help us with some of the projects that we have. So, for example, we have the accessibility standards work to do. We did that together and made sure that our websites were in line with the new accessibility regulations. We've talked there about transactional HR and payroll. We still have that from CDC, but everything else with regards to policies and casework, etc., is done through contractor with LGSS, and that's working extremely well. IT services, this is the one area which is of real importance to us with regards to that. We know that there's a huge job to do in making sure that all of the IT services are right when we move into the unitaries, and CDC is playing its role in that as well. We've actually strengthened our resource with regards to IT, because we know that CDC, and I quite understand why, wish to be now working a lot more closely with their Oxfordshire partner and looking to become more efficient and effective with their IT infrastructure there. But they are still helping us with regards to making sure that we have our services supplied until the 31st of March and beyond, as we actually move into the transition. And Jeff's actually on the project team, which is making sure that happens. Members may be aware that we had 3 CDC members of staff who actually were in the forum and were only doing SNC work, and it made sense for them to transfer to us so that they are in place when it comes to the unitary as well. Customer services, I'm sure members will all be aware that we separate on the 24th of March. And again, Jeff brings regular reports to various committees setting out the performance on customer services. And that is going extremely well now. And we just have some final work to do on separation with regard to system permissions and email addresses. And if I remember rightly, the rest of these now have all been, well, no, hang on. Most of these have now been separated for some time. We still do have yes, we all have. I was just reading the one there for spatial services and land charges, but we separated that one as well now. So yes, it finishes off with those which have been separated for some time, but they are just there for completeness. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Carl, you're on mute.
I resolved that I wasn't going to say anything on this one. I was going to keep stum, so I muted myself, but I can't hold back. I know it's not sort of relevant to this committee, but could I just ask that in the box that says update under strategic transport, we keep in view A43 crossovers, because north of Toaster they are partly being addressed through some of the development that's planned. South of Toaster they are not, and although fortunately there have not been any fatalities at the Whitfield crossover in the past 2 or 3 years, there was one at the Radstone crossover, I think just last year, and Councillor Baggott-Webb will back me up on that one. And the other comment was under IT services, you say the 3 CDC IT staff based at the forum have transferred to CNC. Is 3 our total complement for IT services, or do we have any others? And if not, are they, I don't want to say adequate because there is no suggestion about their competency, but is that number sufficient to do all the work that needs to be done?
It's sufficient for the work which we need to do with regards to any help requests and amendments of that nature. Obviously, we still link into CDC if it's a work of a higher level, if I may say.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
I could just pick up on what Carol said and add to it as well. With regards to Whitfield, originally it was going to be included in the HS2 changes, but I gather there's been a redesign and it now may not be. So I have no idea how dangerous that turning will become, or maybe less dangerous. With regards to the one Carol mentioned on Radstone, that was a very interesting one because someone actually just didn't look at the road signs and made a turn they shouldn't have made. So I'm not sure whether there was any way around that. But the Whitfield one, yes, very concerning. The one I also want to mention is one we've been dragging on for over 2 years now, and that is the junction of the Radstone Road and Northampton Road as part of the 106 agreement. That seems to have got locked into problems with NCC, and we're still waiting for a deed of deviation to be signed on that. And we've got the medical centre, Sainsbury's, a new care home, all opening in the next few weeks, and a road junction that's nowhere near fit for purpose. So I just wondered if that was being picked up at the same time.
I don't know, because obviously this is talking about the separation, but again, if you were just to jot down those, then we'll look into those for you separately.
Okay. Phil?
At this point, can I declare an interest in the strategic transport element of that? I have a personal interest in the A43 crossovers on the north of Toaster, so I think it's only right we record that, please. Democratic Services.
Thanks, Phil. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. If there are no further comments on this one, I would just like to register my thanks to Jeff and Andrew for really following through on this and just maintaining, you know, the contact with CDC and maintaining those services which are absolutely vital, you know, in the run up to vesting day. Obviously, I've got a vested interest as the SRO for the IT program overall, and I know how vital that support is going to be continuing beyond vesting day to enable some of the transformation that will happen, you know, in the subsequent months. So I would like to pay tribute to Jeff and Andrew especially for all their work in maintaining that relationship.
Yeah, I would agree and echo that. One other comment that I had on this is, has this report been sent to LGR program? Are aware of all of these policies and services in particular that come to a halt on the 1st of April? Because my concern with a lot of this is there is this the expectation possibly that on day one not an awful lot might change, and that if something doesn't happen on day one, well, it's okay because it can carry on. For South Northampton, it may not be a valid assumption that it's okay and we'll just carry on, because if our agreements with Cherwell have run out, you know, it is a hard stop date. It is not a target that could be a bit flexible. And I think we need to be really aware of that these are days that things could quite literally stop and be switched off, or people leave, or whatever it is, and they're not things that will just naturally transition. I've tried to say to them numerous times at leaders' meetings that I've been at, but I'm still wanting to make sure the point is always made to them.
Yeah, so with regards to separation, and looking at that table there, most things, we're in the same position as everybody else. We're now providing our own services. Like other authorities, we all have a number of agreements in place, and I talked there about the one that we have with Warwick. We need to be making sure that that's picked up and there's a stream of work who's doing that. ICT is the biggest risk for us, as Richard was saying as well, and that is linked into LGR, and Cheryl was actually working on this as well to make sure that it links into the plans with regards to her. I think on a general point, we know that the regulations say that everything transfers across. That's fine. So there you are. You have your legal requirement there. But all authorities now are looking at their closed-down arrangements to make sure that everything is, and using my phraseology, neat and tidy and in place, so that come the 31st of March, you're in a position to pick up those cases and anything else and all the records on the 1st of April. We're not leaving it to chance. We're making sure that there is a project which is looking to do that with regards to contracts, assets, any agreements, caseloads, records, anything like that. Make sure there's a good tidy up and we are able to transfer nice and neatly on the 1st of April.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, through you. What I would suggest, Andrew, is we just copy Jane Carr in on the existing status of this report.
Okay.
She's well aware of it, obviously, but now she's in a slightly more influential position in terms of West Northants, so I think that's probably wise to copy her in.
Will do.
Okay. So yeah, our recommendation is to note the report. Are we happy to note the report and add those? There's the thing about the A43 that Carl wanted to put on there, but
Agreed.
we agreed to note the report. Thank you. And I think that's the last item of business. There is no urgent items that I've been aware of, so I will close the meeting at 11:44. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Chairman.
And I'm sure we'll get plenty of reports, finalised and then made good.